Sad Dad Games podcast. I'm Shan.
I am Eric.
I'm Tucker.
And I'm Lundy.
Today we'll be talking about The Last of Us Part 2, Abby Day 1 in Seattle. And we are...
Day 2. We are finally
Abby's
on day
day
2.
Yeah.
Right?
Did I say day... What did I say? Day 1?
You said day 1. We're talking about Abby Day 2.
It would be Abby Day 1 Part 4 because we broke it into 3 parts already.
There's lots of parts, The Last of Us Part 2, part this, Day 1, Part 7. Like
Take 3.
It's all very confusing.
It's just, we've been doing it for so many weeks. It's just like I've been in this Groundhog's Day situation. But we had our featured guest in the past, Lundy, and he loves this section, so we decided to have him back on. Lundy, why do you love this section so much?
I love the whole game, and I believe I mentioned last time that I was on that these games are just a series of me playing through the whole thing because I'm always like, oh, I love that game. It's time to replay it. And then every single segment, I'm like, oh, I hate this part. I hate this part. And what we're talking about today is probably the biggest thing where I'm like, oh, I really, really hate this part, which means it's probably the best part of the game. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
So Lundy, have you been playing along as we've been talking about this?
Yeah, off and on and things like. There's a couple of times where I get caught up on other things, and so I'll, because I've played it through, I just load to boot up to where you are, so I'll jump ahead occasionally, but then that messes me up because I'm not able to have my loadout exactly how I want it because I tend to be a little bit of a hoarder, with resources. It's like, well, I can't use this because I might need it later. And so I always end up making it way harder on myself. So when I do that and jump ahead, I find that I'm short on a lot of resources.
Okay. Well, we all like to pretend that we bring different perspectives to this podcast, but we're all just like a bunch of white boys with white boy perspectives. So what is your unorthodox perspective that you bring to the White Boy podcast?
Where do you fall on the white boy spectrum?
What are you going to bring that's fresh
tan.
Today?
Oh,
what makes you interesting?
What makes me interesting? The fact that I probably suck at video games. So I'm coming in this.
So does Eric, and so does Tucker.
Whoa.
It depends on the game. Let's hang on there. Yeah.
Wait. For Eric, it's first person shooter. For Tucker, it's platforming, and for me, it's just like, I don't know, a little bit of everything.
Sort of okay at everything, and I'm pretty good at some things and bad at a lot of things.
I'm pretty terrible across the board. I don't play many games online because I'm just bad and I lose all the time, and I'm too competitive to lose, too much of a perfectionist to lose. That it upsets me when I lose, and I'm just not.
Lundy doesn't lose games; he wins them.
He quits them because they're unfair.
To borrow the old Michael Jordan quote, I've never lost. I've just run out of time.
All right.
But what are your interests that you might bring in as a fresh perspective while talking about games?
I mean, I like to try to relate things to them. I like to try to see some of the deeper meanings with certain things. I like to weigh in, one of my favorite things to look for in things like this specifically are some of the kind of the ethical implications, some of the ethical dilemmas that are presented. I think we talked a little bit about those kinds of things last time I was on. In regards to, what is justice, who gets to carry out justice, things like that. Those are some of the themes that we touched on a little bit. And so those are the kinds of the things that I tend to look for. Sometimes I miss it. That's just how it goes. Those are some of the things that I tend to miss from time to time. But I like to look for those kinds of things as well as, just explore new angles. Like I love hearing what other people, how they interpret it and how that may or may not challenge how I interpreted it. So I'll try to bring that perspective. We'll see if I'm successful in bringing that or not, but we'll
freaking better. We'll kick you right off the show, man.
I mean,
well,
as is your right.
Yeah.
You only need technically at minimum 3 to do it. So let's turn this into a circle jerk. What have been your favorite philosophical and ethical discussions that we've had so far on this show?
Tell us what you like about us, Lundy. Detailed and itemized specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really like a lot of what you guys have talked about in the past with Joel, you know, and how complex of a character that he is. It's challenged a lot of my viewpoint because you guys tend to have more of, you know, more of kind of a noble, like, you know, he's a protector. He does these kinds of things. And I've always looked at him as a kind of terrible person. Like, I really like his character a lot, you know, and I was super bummed out, you know, when he died at the beginning of the game. But I've always looked at him a lot more kind of villainy. And I think that perspective might come, you know, I know that, you know, at least in the case of Eric, you know, you're a dad. I assume that with the Sad Dad Name podcast that, you know, Shan and Tucker, you probably have kids. I don't know that.
We have one each. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think gets interesting when discussing the character of Joel is the perspective from people who have kids versus me, who, you know, just a single dude in his 30s, no kids. There, you know, people with children are a lot more like, you know, and this is something that Neil Druckmann has talked about in interviews where when they've asked people, the people who are parents are like, oh yeah, I would do the same thing. Like, right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Like, I would do what Joel did. And people outside of that were
we
like,
as capable as Joel.
yeah, yeah. And, you know,
we would all try to do what Joel did and probably fail.
and so my perspective is different because, you know, that's something where, like, I just don't have that kind of connection. And so that wasn't something that ever really clicked in my mind right away. You know, my whole connection with Ellie was just from playing the game. And it's like, well, yeah, but also like trying to think a little bit more like worldview because, you know, I don't have that family that I'm now like that I'm responsible for or a protector of. It's like, well, but yeah, but all of humanity, like that should be the priority. Where you guys always, you know, you guys all have that different perspective that a lot of parents in like the test groups and focus groups that Neil Druckmann talked to all had the same thing where it was like, well, no, yeah, Joel, like, sure, we can, you know, like everybody might agree that, you know, his methods were wrong or anything like that, but his motivation was right. And so hearing you guys talk about that has been fascinating to me because I'm like, that's a completely different perspective than what I had, but I don't think it's a wrong perspective at all. I think that it's very interesting and I enjoy that it challenges what my initial thoughts and views on it were.
Yeah, like somebody breaks into your house and they're like, well, I need to steal your money because I'm going to use it to save my kid. It's like, well, you have the right to protect your family and your house. You have the right to protect your property. So of course you're allowed to kill the person. Like it's the same thing with like protecting your family. In this case, like this person was like at this point, metaphorically and to a degree, almost literally his child by this point. He has the absolute right to protect his child, and he has guardianship over her. He is allowed to do anything in his ability to protect them, and anything between point A and B, he's authorized to do.
Yeah, Lundy, I had those exact same feelings before I became a parent, and then becoming a parent, I flipped. So it's just really interesting how that perspective just completely changes the view of how you view Joel as a person and as a father figure. So yeah, I love this game just because it does challenge your beliefs the more and more you play it.
Yeah. All right, circle jerk over. Thank you for that. I'm satisfied and
I don't know if
smiling.
you're using that word the right way.
I
consult Urban
absolutely
Dictionary.
am. All right. So at the beginning of this section, we've picked up the kids, Yara and Lev, and we take them to the aquarium. In Lundy, you don't know, but in the previous episode, we've established that the plural of aquarium is aquaria.
I hate this so much. Never
So
gonna
I'm-
live it down. I will never accept that. It's aquariums. Aquaria is stupid. It is a stupid way. It's wrong. Whoever came up with that was just wrong. They did it wrong. It's
I mean,
aquariums.
probably
Yeah.
what
So,
Greeks.
Yeah.
Greeks probably
So
came up with
I'm
that.
going. It's Greek. Yeah. Well, it's Latin, right? Because like a stadium and like the plural of that
Stadia,
would be
yeah.
stadia.
Is it Stadia? Oh, that makes me
yeah.
more mad.
Yeah, it's
Well, it'd be
Stadia.
like no, and like that's the name of like Google's failed experiment with like the Stadia.
Google Stadiums. Yeah.
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 Google Stadiums.
Google Stadiums. Am I not remembering that right?
So I've been going out of my way to like it's not even comprehensible, but I'm like, so they go to one of the many aquaria in the Northeast region to this one stadium or to this one aquarium that they keep. I don't know. It never works, but I try to say aquaria as many times as possible to anger Eric, and and it always works.
It's fine. I don't hate it. It's totally fine. You should keep doing it a lot.
And all right, so when we get there, you can see that Abby's body language, she's upset that she sees Mel there when she first gets there, but she is looking for Mel, but like because she needs Mel to fix Yara's clipped wing, the broken arm that looks like I haven't seen a red like this since like red Jello, or
Bad.
yeah, it's a very vibrant red. And
It looks like an uncooked sausage. It's all like bloated, and it just looks like it's just like someone took a bag and just filled it with liquid, and it just like it's just it does not look good.
right. And then immediately upon like holding up the Seraphite to Mel, she's like her arm's broken or something, and she's like, and without Mel even saying a word, I believe she just like immediately says like, oh, it wasn't me. Like, I love this like unspoken tension between them of like, I know that you think I'm a terrible person, and so I know your mind already went there, so I'm going to dispel what I already know you think of me. I didn't do this. I didn't hurt this child. I know you think that I'm somebody who would hurt a child.
Friggin'
Well,
Mel.
later on, Mel even like confronts Abby more and is like, "Why are you trying to save these scars? You're Isaac's #1 scar killer."
Mm-hmm.
And it's just even thinking less of Abby, and just questioning not only if she did it or not, but her entire motivation around Lev and Yara, which I just love. I mean, I hate Mel with a fiery passion, just of her stupid face. But yeah, I can't remember where I was going with that. I got sidetracked by my hate.
Tucker got all worked up and angry at Mel and forgot what he was talking about.
Well, it's funny, like she has the right to protect her relationship, but like, why do I still despise her? Is it because like she clearly can't read the relationship that Owen doesn't want her, and she's still still protecting the relationship by pushing? I don't know. It's like she's just being really annoying about it. It's like, what are you protecting even? You're just like being obnoxious about it.
Well, we've talked about it before. It's the whole Skylar from Breaking Bad thing, where it's like Skylar is the one being wronged. She's not a bad, like Walt is the bad guy, and she is being affected by the bad guy. But we still hate Skylar anyways. We're like, why won't you just let him go off and be a drug lord? You're being so unreasonable. And it's like the same thing with Mel. It's like Mel is being wronged here. She's the one in a bad situation, and we're all like, oh, friggin' Mel, I hate that chick. Like, why did that happen in our brains? She's just so unlikable. Like, I just
yeah, and Abby's just a bad person. But at least she's trying. Finally, she's on her
a
redemptive
redemptive arc. Oh, hey, Jinx, you owe me a
Yeah.
Coke. Yep.
It's right here. Screw you.
All right. Well, I'll wait in the mail. I'll wait for it in the mail. I can talk.
In the mail.
Right. Mel the snail. Let's not
Mel
forget
the
that.
Snail. Yeah. Salt the
You
snail.
don't want to salt the snail, but you have to. All right, so there's an urgent situation. They don't have a lot of time, so Lev is going to take them on a harrowing journey. Love this journey for them, and yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean before they actually leave, they have such a cool interaction where they like, well, what medical supplies do we need? And Mel writes it on a list, and she's like, Owen, do you have that here? Owen says no, and so it's like we have to go to the hospital, but it's too far. She won't make it in time. So Lev suggests taking a shortcut to get to the hospital, and Abby is just like super on board. Like, yeah, whatever Yara needs, let's totally do it. And I like the first time I played this game, I was like, this is a former enemy that Abby has known for a day, less than a day, like half a day. And I was like, why does Abby care so much about Yara? Why is she willing to go and do this? And so
I
I've
have
been
that exact same note.
yeah, I've been on the
Yeah.
lookout for that this playthrough to really try to understand Abby's motivations because the first time I played the game, I did not understand it. It just seemed like a necessity of the story, and so the video, like the writers just kind of made it happen, but it didn't feel as genuine as I kind of thought maybe it should be. That like, and we'll talk about that more as we get to the things that Abby does, but also as they're getting ready to go, Mel's like, fine, gives them a list, like go on your dangerous, crazy suicide mission. And Mel just like makes a list and gives it to Abby, like, yep, please go die. Like Mel knows that it's crazy, and she's just like, get out of here. And Owen is the one that's like, no, wait, what are you doing? You're crazy. And then as they're leaving, Mel shoots Owen a look like, excuse me? Like it's just this like
This
out of
is
the
your
side of her
child.
eye, these daggers like at Owen as Abby's leaving, like, why are you trying to get her to stay? Should I know something? Like Mel knows. She knows something went down.
I
Mel
think
the
it's
snail.
interesting too that like when Abby's kind of a little bit gung ho to like, all right, like, yeah, let's go. She's like, because they're like, we need these supplies. Let's go to the hospital. And she's like, okay, give me the list. I'll go right now. And Mel tells her it's it'll take you this long, and she's like, I don't mind. And Mel cuts her off and is like, Abby, this isn't about you. She doesn't like Yara doesn't have that long to live. Like she's not going to survive that amount of time. And that's when Lev, and so we kind of see, I think Abby's motivation, at least for like, wanting to kind of get out, is like she feels, I think, some guilt about what her and Owen did, and she's just like, this is a little too tense. I need to get out of here however I can, whatever excuse I can take to just like, yeah, give me that. I don't care. I'll go spend hours walking to this hospital just so I don't have to be here in this moment any longer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Word.
because upon leaving, Abby said, well, like Owen stops her at the door, and Abby says she's not mad about seeing Mel, but isn't she? Because clearly that's a part of the tension. She's mad that like immediately after banging Owen, that like he's right back with Mel, and he hasn't like called off the situation. He's not distancing himself. But is she mad about something else as well? Like, what do you think?
I mean, I think
I kind of just go
Sorry,
ahead.
go
Lenny.
ahead.
I kind of just read it as like what you were saying, Shan, that she's just like, it seems like Owen slept with Abby and then Mel came around and just kind of, he slid back into what he was doing before and without consulting Abby, which isn't really fair because Abby was gone and they haven't had a chance to like, Mel's been back for maybe a couple hours. They haven't had a chance to really talk about it. So like, but I think that that's how I read that, is that she's just kind of upset at Owen for going back to Mel.
Yeah, I think
I go for it.
I was going to say, I think there's that. I also think there's some anger at herself, because
That's it.
she's had that relationship with Owen. It didn't work. She knows that, and she allowed herself to put herself in that position. And you kind of see it in the morning, like when they wake up, she like looks over at him and kind of has that moment of like, what am I doing? I know this is a bad idea, and she's acknowledging that those feelings exist, but she's mad that those feelings exist. She doesn't want to feel those things. She doesn't want to be in this position. She doesn't want to want that. And so I think that she's mad at Mel for showing up, mad at Owen for still kind of being there with Mel, and mad at herself for causing all of this whole situation and allowing herself to slide back into her old feelings.
Yeah, that's how I also read it. I think she's mad at herself for allowing herself to be with Owen. And the only reason she was ever not wanting to be with Owen is because she always felt like she had a greater responsibility, first to take out Joel, but also to the community of the wolves, and to be second in command to Isaac, and now to take care of the kids. So every time she slips and starts to give in to being in a relationship with Owen, she is abdicating her responsibility to a greater cause. And so she's mad that she has slipped on her greater responsibility. And right now, when she's having to protect children, and so it's like the stakes are immediately being raised again. So I think just like she's like in a scrambled state of mind. I think that's part of it. All right. So after we leave the aquarium of the many aquaria in the Northeast region.
Stop it.
Yeah. So we start our ascent up the skyscrapers. I love like the flooding of this area. Just some beautiful design. There's a lot of like hidden areas that you can explore that are very easy to miss, and there's some like fun dialogue that you can start to explore with Lev and start to poke out like what they don't see about each other and their communities. What do you love about what goes on in this spot and this section?
I love the banter between Abby and Lev. And this is another thing where it's sort of like at first it was a little harder for me to stomach that it's like Abby seems to be warming up to Lev very quickly. It's a lot of things happening, but we have to remember that this like in the course of this section of the game that we're playing, she knows Lev and Yara for like 2 days. And so she starts warming up to them pretty quickly, especially Lev, and they're starting to get kind of chatty. And I like when they start to talk a little bit more about why Lev shaved his head, and then Abby goes, "Well, that's pretty punk rock of you," and Lev's just like, well, "What does that mean?" And she's like, "Oh, it means like it's cool," and he's like, "What does cool mean?" Like it's just this whole like vocabulary and since the Seraphites are such a closed community, they've got their own way of speech, and it has almost nothing to do with the old world. So punk rock and even slang like cool is not in his lexicon. And I love that later in the game, Abby does something that Lev thinks is cool, and he goes, cold. And Abby's like, cool. And he goes, what? Like, just this complete, like, just misuse of the term cool, I thought was kind of adorable.
I love how often they push with language on each other. Like all the way up and down this building, they're constantly using language to tear down barriers.
Yeah, I really like, this is my very first playthrough. This was the part of the game where Lev really just starts to endear himself as a character to you, the player. Like I also really loved like the punk rock thing, and it keeps growing. As you guys have said, like they keep trying to like understand each other. She keeps saying scars, and he's like, nope, Seraphites, and correcting her. And I think my favorite part when I was like, okay, like I love this character a lot, is when you have this battle kind of up in like the scaffolding and things like that with a bunch of the other Seraphites, and as soon as you finally kill the last one, Abby's like, ugh, fuck these scars, Seraphites, whatever. And then Lev chimes in, he's like, yeah, fuck them. And she's like, I don't think I've ever heard a Seraphite swear. And he's like, oh, it's my first time. And like that to me, I was like, I love this kid. Like that was awesome. Like just so perfect. Because like you can tell like it feels really forced, the way that like the dialogue, like really puts kind of the emphasis on it, but you can tell that he's like uncomfortable with it. And like that moment was just such a I don't know, it brought me so much joy, and it still does every time. I'm like, yes, like I love that part of the game so much. And it shows that bond quickly forming.
It reminds me of iRobot. Will Smith, like, stop swearing, you're not good at it, to Shia LaBeouf. But in this case, I'm incredibly for it. But this also reminds me of like we have a microcosm of this in Utah, where it's like Utah has probably some of the most unique cultural lexicon of like anywhere in the United States. I don't think you have anywhere else with like such a cultural bubble where people speak unique to anywhere else in the United States. And it's because of like our incredibly dense religious community that like we can't use swears, and we like have like a lot of unique cultural things like fry sauce or whatever, just like these like little cultural idiosyncrasies that like you only understand if you're here. And like other states I'm sure have this too, but like I'm sure people come here and they're like, I don't understand the words coming out of these people's mouths. Like I'm sure there's like a lot of that going on here.
Hot take: fry sauce is gross. I stand by it.
Anything mixed with mayonnaise is not great.
Well, see, I like mayonnaise, but fry sauce is gross.
Yeah. So I think
Really,
there's
no one
like
else is going to chime in on that. You're just going to let that hang. Who else? Say something. Don't just let me sit here with my fry sauce opinion by myself.
No, we're
I
going
also
to make you
perfectly
feel
fine with
weird
people
about
having
it
their own
because you
opinions.
deserve to feel weird about that.
Okay,
Like,
fine, whatever. You guys
That's
are the
blasphemous,
worst.
but we're just going to like let you sit there and stew in your own uncomfortable feeling.
I think I'm the only person in the world that doesn't like ketchup. I am not a picky eater. I will not eat ketchup. I would sooner go hungry. I hate ketchup. It's disgusting. I can't stand it. I don't know why people eat it. Rant over.
there's a reason that Eric is an expatriate of Utah. He's not allowed in these borders anymore.
They won't let me back. I don't like fry sauce. I get to the border and they give me my tub of fry sauce and I say no thank you, and then they just tell me to turn around and leave. Yeah.
Yep. Then we slap him on the face and we say we hate you, and
Yeah, send me on my way back to the south with my biscuits and gravy.
yeah. And your grits, which
Yeah, I love grits. Grits are delicious. Eggs, bacon, and grits. You mix them all together. It's a happy breakfast.
Yeah.
Shrimp and grits, delicious.
You're not a Utahn unless you have no idea what a grit is.
Yeah, grits are delicious. Except
Well, that's
for
not
don't
true.
all of any Utah listeners, you'll hate grits. It's like worse oatmeal, but I love grits.
Yeah. So anyway, like it's a coming of age for any Utahn the first time you use your first swear. Like, and like it feels like almost like a childish to say swear or curse. Like I don't even know if people say that outside of Utah. Like
He said a
almost
swear.
have. He said a swear. Like it almost sounds like we have to coddle like the euphemism for swearing or something, like he's cussing, or I don't know, it feels childish, but we're so like childish about swearing, it's stupid. I recently started coming out with swearing just like this last year. I started like I toyed with it like personally. I told my wife, I was like, I think I'm gonna start like doing it under my breath just to see how I feel about it, see if it's gonna see if it fits my personality. And then like once, and I did that while playing video games, I'm like, because like I always felt like it, like I felt like it made me feel less intelligent if I used it as a crutch while speaking when I could use more intelligent words. And that's why I sound pedantic and like an idiot while I speak, because I'm constantly speaking over people and bloviating that way. But now I have that, and
but
now I have that,
use
and I say stupid shit at the same time. Exactly. Now I have the best of both worlds. I can use both and speak the language of the common man and and I don't even know what the other kind of language is. It's just I can speak both. I don't know.
The language of the global elite. Tripped
Exactly.
over
The pricks of the world.
F on the
I'm not.
delivery.
I'm definitely not welcome in their circle. I don't have the $ assigned to my person to be welcome in their circles. So,
I mean, if you use
Anyway.
$1 million words, they'll probably think you've got the money to back it.
yeah, sure.
Stocks, investments.
Portfolio.
So currency.
Nailed it. I believe you're
Whoa,
right.
Shan, are you a
Based on
millionaire?
that, yeah.
I am a millionaire. All right. Well, this is a really dumb tangent, and we should just get right back to it, right?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So as we're ascending, we then come across some Seraphites, and we hear Lev get dead named by the Seraphites as Lily. Now, this completely went over my head the first time I played the game. I did not know anything about the trans community. And in fact, I played the entire game, did not understand that Lev was like a trans character. And after I played it, I was like, I saw there was a huge backlash against the game, against like a trans character. I was like, was Abby trans? Like, because Abby was masculine? The whole thing went over my head. I completely missed the narrative because they never really explain it. They just kind of like dance around it, and they don't like overtly say it. And I had never understood. Yeah, and I had never understood that community. I had never understood the language around it. And so like, and I thought, well, Abby has a sex scene, takes off her shirt, and like she had shrunken chesticles. There was nothing there. So I had no idea what was going on. Like, I completely missed the narrative on this. It was hilarious. And I didn't understand what dead naming was. I'm sure that wasn't lost on anyone else. This was just me.
I was going to say, I have no idea how you missed that. It seems pretty overt to me. Like, they all but lay it out for you.
Yeah.
It's just complete ignorance on like how this whole thing works.
Yeah, no, I thought they handled it in a very tasteful manner.
Yeah,
Like I picked up on it the first time, and
I'm sure you did.
Like a normal person.
it was it was one of those things where I was like, oh, interesting, and like, in the quest to avoid spoilers, I remember seeing something about trans, and I was like, no, like don't. And so I knew that somewhere in the game there was probably something like that, but I didn't know what or how. And so that popped up, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, and continued to play. And I felt like they did it in a really great way where, like, obviously some people are going to be upset about it, but I didn't feel like I was ever, like, preached to, or, like, like I didn't feel like there was any sort of, like, heavy-handed. It was just, this is a character, this is their experience, and it fit perfectly with the story, because it's like, yeah, if you're in a ridiculously controlling religious environment and you need a character to run away, for the sake of the story, there's a ton of different ways that you could go with it. And that is one that it's like, yeah, of course they would be like, hey, we need to chase down this kid and kill them, because like this goes against our very strict religious, like it could have been any number of things, but it was a great way for them to be like, hey, we know of, here's a trans actor that we want to come in and play this trans character. It's a great way to be inclusive and to be respectful to the community and still have it fit within the story and not feel like it was forced or anything. To me, I was like, this is a very like tactful way to be respectful and inclusive, and like I really appreciated it. I didn't know what to expect going in, and I was like, yeah, sure, like like immediately on board, and thought that they handled it great.
Yeah, you can play this entire game and never feel like it was teaching you had to be more accepting of this ideology or this type of person. Maybe you come away with that if you wanted that, but I think ultimately this game, thematically, it's a game about identity and what it takes to be accepted, and why you join communities, why you leave communities. That is ultimately what the entire game is about. And this is like one of the greatest examples of how somebody can immediately be ostracized from a community based on identity. And so it wasn't forced. It was just like a perfect example of it. And it wasn't preachy. I would also be annoyed by that. Like, perfect example of like obviously there's like a great like cultural debate on like woke culture being shoved down people's throats, and how that's annoying in entertainment. I understand why that's annoying. I also would I also get annoyed by it, but like I'm also not like so annoyed by it by some people that I would can't try to cancel things to the same degree that others do. I would just kind of tolerate it and move on. And like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right? Like one of my very favorite shows. The last season gets heavy-handed, but I would still watch it. I still think it's a fantastic show, but it gets way heavy-handed. That's kind of where I am. It's like, it's like that wasn't for me, but I still laugh at it. It's still fun for me. So I'm just somewhere in the middle. I'm a squishy on it, right? I'm not partisan on it. That's so, but like, that's where I think this game kind of nailed it. It's just, it fits thematically and it doesn't preach. It just works. And so they just wrote it in and you can take it or leave it. I love that. It just works. And of course, we're probably going to get canceled for even talking about it, but it's in the game. We're just talking about it because it exists.
Yeah. And like I said, like I agree 100% with what you said. They wrote it in, they weren't preachy about it. And it was like, if anything, I think it actually, made me more sympathetic to, that community. Like it was something that I still don't know, like I still don't understand, but I have met people, and I try to understand and, respect wherever anybody is. But it was something that I just was and still am pretty clueless on. But it made me more sympathetic to be like, oh, hey, here's this character. And I don't feel like it's like telling me what my opinion has to be. It's just making this the focus was on making it a good, compelling character. And this just happens to be part of who they are. It happens to be their identity. And as a result, my feelings towards this character were very positive and very, it was like, yeah, that would be really hard. I don't understand it, but it sounds really difficult, like just a hard situation to be in. And so I think that's a big part of why it worked is, like you said, this is their identity and this is why they're ostracized. And we're not going to just overly like hammer on this and tell you like, this is what you have to feel about this character. But it's just like, here's this character and we're going to write them as, an endearing, fun character. And if you like them, then great. That means we did our job.
Well, I think it's also a super relatable way of why somebody leaves a community. It's typically, at least from what I've seen, it's very rarely like, oh, I just don't want to be part of this community anymore. There's something deep down that they identify with that does not fit with that community, and
it's
that's
friction.
why it's friction. That's why they leave, and it's typically not friction that they seek out. And so that's why I really love Lev in this instance because, yeah, it's relatable. It's understandable why he's leaving. It's understanding his struggle between he still wants to have the beliefs of the Seraphites, but they don't want to accept him. And I think a lot of us have felt that in one way or the other, within all these little micro communities we're in throughout our entire lives.
Right. This is like why I have a lot of compassion for Lev's character is because I'm a part of the Mormon community right now, but I'm having a lot of friction in that community because I have heterodox beliefs that are fictitious to that community. And I have had those beliefs, ideologies for 10, 15 years. And it has accelerated in the last 5 years, and it feels like the community is going in the opposite direction. They're accelerating in the opposite direction while I'm accelerating in my direction. And it's like, I don't know how long that's sustainable. It's really hard to have a core ideology while that community is drifting the other direction. It's like, I still want the closeness, I still want the love, but it's like, at what point are we just too far apart that it can't be sustained anymore? And I understand how Lev gets to that point where it's like it's a breaking point, and I can't be there anymore. And so just like it hurts. Like I don't want that, but like at what point do you have to run away? So I can't wait for like friends or family to listen to this because they don't know about this. This is just something that like I have kept to myself for 10 years, and I just allow them to
Might
think
as well
that I'm
put it out on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. I just like the greatest con that I've ever lived in my life is just allowing them to think that I'm perfectly devout religious type. And you just allow people to believe that you're still perfectly religious. And then you never correct them otherwise.
Shan has shaved his inner head.
Yeah, exactly.
He's just one step away from shaving his real head.
You just gotta move out of Utah. That's the solution. Come to North Carolina.
But I need my family. Like I would. We'll
bring them too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just like it is very hard in Utah to break free from the religious community, because I wouldn't say like everybody outside of Utah on the internet calls the Mormon community a cult. And I think that's just a cheap shot at what Mormonism is. But I do think there is sort of a cultural cultness to it. So I wouldn't say the religion is, but the cultural milieu of what Mormonism is keeps a cult-like hold on people being to maintain the practice of the religion, because breaking free from it definitely creates like friction in your family and friends relationship for the rest of your life, that like it's so abrasive, you don't want to live that way for the rest of your life. So it's easier to just stay in, even if it's hard for you. So that sucks.
I do think.
Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, just a quick little added note on, like, because I do think that, like there is that perception, like while you're on the inside, like, full disclosure, like I haven't really been, like I left religion, I'm still very, positive with my friends and family, like all of those kinds of things. I still have a great respect for the religion that I grew up in, but I no longer consider myself religious. And when I finally made that decision, it was easier and smoother, and I didn't like proclaim it or anything like that. It wasn't like a big,
quiet quitting.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, I talked to my, some of my family, and it was like, oh, okay, sure. And life went on. And, it was just kind of like, but like there does seem to be, like you said, because of the culture, like it feels like there's going to be this big reaction, this big adverse reaction. And in my experience, I know other people's experience are very different, but in my experience, that wasn't the case. It was very much like people were like, oh, really? Oh, okay. And, it moved on. But I do think that a lot of that, I do agree with a lot of what you said. There is that culture in there that is kind of almost cult-like, which, I mean, the root word of culture, is cult. And so, I think that, like, a lot of people get worried about it. And it does make Lev's story relatable in that sense, where it's like, oh, like I feel like I'm leaving, but at the same time, that isn't something where I personally related to it, because my experience, it was just kind of a shrug, and it was like, oh, okay, sure.
Whereas I have like my parents, which are super Orthodox, devout, and my wife's parents, which it's like I've seen people leave on my wife's side, and they still talk about it 20 years later every time that person's name get brought up. So it's like, I don't want that to be the only way they think about me for the rest of their lives. It's like, think about me literally any other way. I'm still a normal human being outside of the paradigm of religion. That's really annoying that you can't think about people any other way other than religion. It's so like two-dimensional. But that's how super religious people think. So they're like, well, I can't think any other way, because you're not going to the highest kingdom of heaven, and you're not going to see Jesus. So it's like that weighs on my heart every single day. That's so much anxiety to carry with you every single day. Like it's frustrating. Anyway.
Maybe let's get back on track. A bit of a conversational turn there.
It is highly relevant, and like I do want to relate our personal lives to the game, and it's probably going to come up again.
Yeah.
But all right, so we continue ascending the skyscrapers. We end up we see more lore of the Seraphites as we go over. I love how we see that Lev is still wanting to be a devout religious character, and I love how their language, they're continuously poking each other. Abby is trying to tear down Lev's religion, saying like, okay, clearly this religion is trying to hurt you, so I'm going to try to tear you down a little bit. And Lev's noticing that there's a deficit in Abby's life, so Lev is trying to prop Abby up with religion, and they're trying to meet each other in the middle. I love this dynamic. I love the psychology of what they're trying to do for each other.
I think it's great. There's a little bit of like times where Abby is talking about she's poking holes and stuff in Lev's beliefs, and Lev goes, well, have you read any of the prophet's writings? I think you'd benefit from them. He's like playing the missionary. He's like trying to like, here, let me get you some of the writings and we'll read them. Let's start a Bible study, kind of like kind of a thing. And so
Missionary
not to that
work.
degree. Yeah, not to that degree, but Lev is something that he really believes in. He's trying to like, he's like to Abby, he notices that deficit, as you put it. So I think that's an interesting dynamic as well.
Well, and I love too that like you can tell like this moment really paints that it's like, no, Lev really believes it, probably more so than most of the other people in that community, because you know he mentions as well that, you know, she never mentions violence, like, you know, their founder never mentioned violence in any of her writings or anything like that, and it wasn't until after she died that they started like stoning and hanging people. And he's like, yeah, this,
don't forget the disemboweling.
yeah.
The religion
He's
didn't
like,
start with murder.
yeah, and you know, he's constantly quoting her sayings and things like that, and it's, you know, when his beliefs are placed on the chopping block, he's like unfazed by it. He's like, no, yeah, because to him, his faith is strong, and so he's like, I can take it being challenged, like, bring it on. And he can counter, you know, because it's not something that he's like a scholar in, it's just something that he is, you know, his faith is rock solid, and no matter what it is that Abby tries to bring up to counter, he's like, I mean, you know, it, and he is just solid in there. And you know, he sees kind of how his community has drifted from, you know, some of those original teachings, but that doesn't shake his faith. Abby's, you know, challenging doesn't really shake his faith. He's still finding his own way that challenges some of what he previously held. But then he does comfort Abby with, you know, some of the sayings that she, you know, that the founder has, that their prophet hasn't. You know, he's like, just, you know, here's this, hold on to this. This is what brings me comfort. And Abby's like, you're right. You know, like it's a beautiful dynamic that helps bring them together.
Yeah, Abby is lost right now. I mean, she's murdered Joel. She has like her community. She has some of the values of that community, but she's adrift right now, and she needs redemption. So she needs some moral clarity during her redemptive arc. And not that she specifically needs religion, but some of the moral clarity that maybe the Seraphites can provide, or anything else, can help give her the focus that she needs to bring her life back on track. And so I love that Lev is helping provide that clarity for her.
I'd even argue part of Abby's redemption is finding her identity. Her identity has been wrapped up in Joel for so long. And you take that away, who was Abby after that? And so I think Lev is this kind of glowing example of what identity is, to where she can, you know, look at Lev and be like, oh, he knows what he is. He knows what he believes. And I think that's where a lot of bonding happens. Why Abby is so quick to bond with Lev over this 2-day period. So she sees him as an example. Oh, go ahead.
I'm remembering Zoolander when he looks in a puddle. He's like, who am I?
I don't know.
I don't know. Then the tiny phone rings.
Yeah.
God?
God? What the shit?
No, what the shit? No, it's me, Derek. I love the line when they are getting in the elevator before the going across the skyscrapers, where Abby is having a panic attack, and Lev is giving this speech about what fear is, and is explaining that fear is escalating, like it's the adrenaline and everything is like an escalation of your strength, and it's actually it's revealing to you how strong you are, and so it's actually a blessing when you experience this, because it shows you what a strong person you are. And I'm paraphrasing because I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I love that, like, Lev is able to comfort her by reminding her of how strong she is in this moment, and that Lev is able to like use her weak moments to opportunistically to give her some prophetic teachings of the religion. It's a little bit of a shyster move because she doesn't want religion, but it does comfort her, and that's when, in her vulnerability, she is able to like lower her defenses and be more receptive of like understanding, instead of like putting up barriers to the differences that they have.
Yeah, this is a really like, this is another one of those moments where I sat and I started to question, where it was like, these are two kids that Abby has known for like a day, and in order to help one of them, Abby has to confront, so far the only thing that we've seen that she's scared of is her fear of heights. And it's like they're inside this building, and the farther up they go, and even before they leave, Ed, Lev is like, yeah, let's take the sky roads, like the path above. And it's like, why at that point did Abby say, oh no, I don't know if I can do that? Like, why didn't she's shown no resistance to this plan at all, to know even like, is there another way, or like no resistance. Lev says, let's go like climb this crazy high thing and go across these huge bridges that cross between buildings. And as they're going up the elevator, Abby starts to panic, but she's not like, no, I'm not going to do this. She just is scared. And I just like, it's this, I might need a little bit of convincing. This seems like a lot of effort and a lot of, I understand Abby's guilt and her need to kind of like find herself again, and she's finding that purpose in Lev. But even with all that, as she's going up this elevator and as she's crossing between these buildings, that's not insignificant for Abby. That is her primary, number one, greatest hindrance and fear that she's confronting for these kids that she's known for a day. So I want to understand this better, and I found some stuff, but I need a little bit more help. Help me understand this better.
I think for me, I think one of the things that helps Abby kind of latch on a little bit to Lev and Yara is, it starts with them saving her life, but she also sees a little bit of herself in them, in that she grew up with a belief system in the Fireflies, and she ultimately left that group for completely different reasons. Lev leaves because, he has a different identity that's not accepted. She leaves the Fireflies because they all get brutally massacred by Joel. But she was, pretty young, like close to their age when that happened. She's, endured some pretty significant childhood trauma. And she's now kind of carried that out. And I love actually what Tucker said about, she has lost her identity now that, her identity was consumed in getting revenge on Joel. And she's got that part taken care of, and now she doesn't know who she is. That's something that I hadn't considered before, that I think is great, but also, does tie into this, where she now sees children that are going through something traumatic, kind of like she did, and she is like, I need to help. One of the things that a lot of therapists do, at least my therapist has been helping with, a lot of the issues that you face as an adult come from healing. Like the way to address that is to heal your inner child, and this is an outward way for her to do that. She's able to see children who are going through traumatic events, and by helping them overcome that instead of being swallowed by that trauma, she's sort of able to begin healing that part of her and continue that redemptive arc that we've seen her on.
Yeah. I also want to say, like, she doesn't know she's going to scale across buildings. Lev has hidden that information from her up until it happens.
Probably wisely. Yeah.
Yeah. And also we know that Abby is very impulsive, so she doesn't have a lot of she doesn't plan a lot. She just like acts and then reacts as she's moving through her actions. So I think it's just like, I'll figure it out as I go. And so she just doesn't know it's going to get as bad as it does until she gets there. I think that's a large part of, like, she doesn't know what she's in for until she gets there.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
like, so when they're scaling, like, they get barely above street level, and Abby's like, "Oh, how much higher are we gonna go?"
Yeah.
And I think
Lev's like,
her idea of the Sky Road is like
hell,
an
yeah.
overpass, where Lev is like, "No, we're gonna be walking on wicker, thousands of feet in the air or hundreds of feet in the air."
We've got a couple of bamboo shoots that we
Yeah.
just laid down on the scaffolding in between buildings. It'll be fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Shannon
Literal twigs holding you up.
hits it a little bit on the head of just, she doesn't really know what she's in for, but she knows that she needs to save Yara's life. And I really like what Lundy said, to heal her inner child so she can actually get past Joel and find out who she really is. And I think Abby, deep down inside, I think she's a good person. I think she wants to help people. I mean, we see that, come from her dad, and she was telling her dad, "Hey, if it was me, if I was in Ellie's shoes, I would want you to sacrifice me." I think Abby has this altruistic core value really deep down inside.
I think that's an
lost
evil
with
trait
Revenge
that
Plot.
she said that, but whatever.
I think that's some surprising self-awareness from Abby, because like Lundy was saying, a lot of people need a therapist to tell them, hey, you need to heal your inner child. And so Abby having that, coming to that conclusion on her own and saying like, hey, I need some healing.
Sexual healing?
Yeah. No.
Hopefully not.
She got that from
What I
Owen.
said. She got that from Owen. She's already good in that department. But that she needs this part of herself healed, and that she's finding that in Lev and Yara. I think that's some surprising self-awareness, which maybe is what's causing my dissonance a little bit, is that for her to connect those dots and understand that that's what she needs to heal.
I don't think
And
she's
I don't know if
connecting
that's
the
what's
dots,
happening.
though.
I don't know.
I don't know if
I
it's
think it's more
necessarily.
so, this feels good, and I want to continue down this path.
Yeah,
I don't know
okay,
why
that-
it feels good. But
Fair
it
enough. I can
does.
get on board with that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily her being like aware that it's like, by helping them, I'm helping myself. But it, like, I think that is like the subconscious motivator, is that, she might not be consciously aware of, like, these are traumatized children, and by helping them get through this, I'm helping myself get through what I went through. Like, I don't think that's her conscious motivation, but I do think that that's, subconsciously there and driving her through these things, to be like,
All right.
okay, like, I got led up to this thing that's, hundreds of feet in the air, and I'm just gonna do it, even though it's seemingly out of character for her. She's doing it. She doesn't really know why, but I think that's the subtle driving factor, is that, she feels it and she doesn't understand maybe on the surface what it is, but I think that's the underlying factor.
Well, we know that she's driven by the guilt of her dad dying because of the dream sequence where she sees Lev and Yara being hanged in the hospital sequence. We see, like, this is sandwiched between the end of day 1 and the end of day 2, the dream sequence of them being hanged and then seeing her dad alive again at the end of this day. And that's like the reprieve of her guilt. And so I think the guilt of of her dad dying and needing to alleviate that by saving these children is driving her through her greatest fears and pushing her over all of these obstacles to save these children. She has to overcome this. So she just is driven by that. It's the guilt of her father dying, and it's the shame, and like it's the shame of killing Joel and needing to replace that with the redemption of saving children, which is the value of her father of saving people. She took a life through Joel, and she needs to save people to redeem herself by saving children.
All right. I consider myself moderately swayed. I have some more thoughts about Abby's journey.
Screw you.
No, listen, I agree. I'm saying moderately swayed. I'm still saying that I agree with everything that you guys are saying.
So
it all makes sense.
You don't think she'd scale the highest skyscraper? You don't think she'd cross this?
No, that's not what I said. I said that I was agreeing. I've been moderately swayed to this. I have more thoughts that I'm going to look out for as we do Seattle Day 3, because there's more parts about Abby's journey that I want to make sense of with this new context. But you have swayed me in this on the events of Day 2, scaling the building.
So
if you let me finish talking, Shan.
It'd be like on Flight of the Conchords when Brett's writing the song. He's like, I'd scale the highest skyscraper to get to you. Would you really do that?
Song. It's a bit long.
Well, no, I wouldn't really do that. Well, it says here that, well, you're kind of promising that you would. All right.
Conchords. I haven't thought about Flight of the Conchords in a minute. I should watch that again.
Man.
You
definitely
quoted
need to
it
go
like
back.
at the beginning of this.
Did I?
The rhinoceros.
What was it?
Oh, I did.
I'm the mother flipping.
I haven't thought about Flight of the Conchords in like 30 minutes. I guess it's so much a part of my daily life that I didn't even realize.
It was early on. I'm not sure if it's in the episode or not. The listeners, if it was like in our banter before, are going to be like,
yeah,
no,
it might have been in the pre-show banter, but I did the rhinoceros rap. So Lundy is right. It's part of my daily life, I guess. I didn't even know.
We have to call back to an earlier discussion a few episodes ago. You asked about using guns and that being old world, and I dismissed it. Turns out there actually is an excuse. Soldiers are allowed to use some old world machinery to because there are just carve out exceptions for them, and that's a convenience. So I was wrong. Eric was right.
No, yeah, I found that and I wrote it down to be I was wrong, or I was right. Shan is wrong.
I was wrong.
Abby asks Lev and says, well, and then Lev, like, what about, why can't you use any old world tech? And then Lev, or why can soldiers use guns? She's like, well, there are some exceptions, especially for soldiers. So there is kind of like if you're a soldier, not all of the rules apply to you so that you can defend yourself and use modern weapons and stuff. So everybody mark down this day. It's the time where I was right about something and Shan was wrong about something. I expect praise and accolades and gold ribbons in the mail, please.
I think this is such a rare situation, but it probably happens more than we know. It's just that I'm just like, I assault you so often and push you into a corner so as to not allow you to come back from any of these situations. So you don't know if you're ever correct.
Yeah, it's not worth the effort to prove Shan wrong very often. Just doubles down and triples down.
Eric, the next time Shan to admit he's wrong, have him do the wrong song from Gravity Falls. Just change it from Stan to Shan.
That's perfect.
I'm Shan. I was wrong. I'm doing the Shan wrong song.
There are a few times, and maybe I should regret this, but like Tucker's given like counter arguments for the sake of debate, and I just like, well, you're just debating me, but I know you're wrong, so I'm going to continue like pushing you on this until you admit defeat, because no, my opinion is actually correct. I'm a little bit mean about it.
Shan's a bully.
Yeah, I am. I'm fine with it. I love that, like, Abby pushes back, like, oh, that's convenient about this, like, carve out for soldiers, because, like, that's also another one of my cynical takes on religion. It's like there's a lot of hand waving and conveniences of, like, especially like in our religion, where it's like anytime something is inconvenient to like the mythology of our religion, there's this really annoying thing that people in our religion do where they just kind of like wave their hand and they're like, oh, it'll be sorted out in the afterlife. And I'm like, no, it's just like there's not an answer for it. Like they didn't figure that out. And like I get really annoyed with that stuff. It's like, have like a little bit of critical thought and just like admit that that might just be wrong. It's like either the earth is 7,000 years old or dinosaurs existed. They can't both be true. Anyway. Moving on. So then we start the descent. One of my very favorite parts of the game.
Wait, really quick. Before, just there, one small...
Oh, we cross over.
Yeah, they cross over such a cool sequence. Like they go across these really, really rickety bridge that's like, it looks like a collapsed like construction crane that's bridging these two buildings. And they go across and Abby's like freaking out. And then she's like, yes, I did it. I like, give me a high five. Like I want some appreciation. And then she's like, oh, Lev, I could give you a hug. I love you. And Lev's like, you're not going to like me in a minute. And then they have to do another one that is even more precarious and even bigger. And it's like, it's just very...
two bamboo shoots wide. And
yeah, it's like, it's a path that's like maybe 2 feet wide. And they're just like shimmying along very like and there's this moment where when you're like halfway across the bridge, everything has been kind of overcast and shrouded in clouds and you can't see all the way down. And then as you're about halfway across, the clouds just kind of go whoop and they all go away and you can see everything. And it's this moment of like, oh no. And like the depth for what is the thing? The rack focus, is that what it's called, Shan?
Yeah.
It does a rack focus where the camera moves and it zooms in at the same time. And so it's this like depth effect that makes Abby's perspective seem very like, whoa.
And they also have like a lens effect where they do a bit of a Gaussian blur on the edges to like, I love that. I love when they pretend to narrow like it's her real camera.
Yeah. So it's this very cool sequence. And then they get to the end of the bridge and Abby slips and they fall through a skylight, luckily not off the whole building, like a story or two down, and they fall into a swimming pool, which is like about as lucky as you can get as far as falling into things goes.
But who fell off the building while trying to cross the sky bridge? Because
I do it every time on purpose.
So
just to see. Yeah,
I hadn't ever fallen off, and like I was just trying to get through it quickly, and wasn't paying super close attention to like the balance mechanic because I was like, oh, like I've never had a problem with this, and so I fell and just assumed that it was that part where it's like, oh, I'm falling, and because like I was right at the end, but I fell just too soon, and it was like, oh, I just died. Like apparently that wasn't the part. Because I needed to go an extra 2 feet to land in the pool.
Yeah, it's like I let Ellie drown that one time. Sometimes you just got to see the death animation.
I just hadn't like moved the camera into the right angle, so like I wasn't moving straight, and so it's like I was moving the stick at the wrong angle, and it's like I can't move that straight. Fell right off. All right, so I love the entire descent.
No, wait. Sorry, I'm one more. This is the last thing, and then you can talk.
Are you sure?
I promise. This is it. But this is okay. So this is the second to last thing because Lundy also has a thing. After you fall into this building, it's like a little apartment building or office building or something. And before you really begin the descent, there's totally a Jamba Juice in there, you guys. For those of you who don't know, I worked for a Jamba Juice starting in 2008. I was just a normal employee. Well, Tucker did too. Me and Tucker worked at the same Jamba Juice for a little while. He managed a Jamba Juice
in Washington.
In Washington.
Yeah,
so I managed a different Jamba Juice. I owned a Jamba Juice for like 7 years, and so like Jamba Juice is a big. And there's it says like let me write it down. It says the
Jumba Juice or something.
No, it's Jumba Juice. But shoot, where is it?
It sounds super delicious.
It says that it's called Orchard Juice, but it has the exact same like wood paneling, and like there's like a strip where you can see like a photograph of a bunch of smoothies lined up as like part of the the like splash guard, and like the font is similar to Jamba Juice, and they have like the same sneeze guard. And I looked, and they have the same blenders, they have the same Zumex juicers for like the carrots and the cucumbers, and I was like, that is 100% a Jamba Juice inside of this office building. I took a lot of screenshots because I was so tickled by that. Like, there's a Jamba Juice, I found it. Anyways, that's all. Now Lundy can do his thing.
I really enjoyed like kind of exploring this too. Like, one of the things that I wanted to make sure to mention, because it reminded me of one of your very earliest episodes as like part of this whole podcast. But I think it was the first Eric's Indie Corner, the Ninja Turtles one, where you guys were having your discussion about like, yeah, it feels like going to the arcade, and you were talking about like finding quarters and stuff in the couches. One of the other really common places that like I remember looking for quarters and change and stuff like that is the drain in a swimming pool. And if you swim down in that pool, down to the drain,
that was amazing.
There's a one of the quarters that you collect as Abby is down there in that drain. And I thought that was such a cool detail that they were like, you know, you can go swim down there and pick a quarter out of the drain.
I had completely forgotten about that. You'd go to the swimming pool, you'd burn your eyeballs, and you would like, and you just like peer down there, and you'd start like trying to like grab these things off the bottom of the pool, and like you'd have to go down a couple times because they're really hard to pull off the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And thank you for those 90s memories.
Yeah, like that was. I went and did that, and I was like, oh man, like that immediate callback to the Sad Dad Games, Eric's Indie Corner about Ninja Turtles and talking about getting quarters out of the couch and stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, but the swimming pool too, like that was another area. But I also liked how, you know, one of the safes in that office area, like there's the safe in the janitor's closet, and they're like, you know, you find the note that's like, the combo for the safe is the same as the Wi-Fi password. And my thought this time was, that's a really terrible Wi-Fi password. Like that's just garbage security. It's just it's six numbers.
6 numbers, yeah.
Like,
well, it should be a guest password, so it's like this should be open because it's like for the gym and everything.
Yeah, but still, it's a little bit weak on the.
Still,
it's a little weak on the Wi-Fi security there. So, you know, that's just
Wi-Fi password is Jamba Juice. Yeah,
Jamba Juice.
It felt like the space balls that, you know, the code is 1 2 3 4 5. It's like, I have to go change my briefcase.
Question, Lundy, did you ever buy any like Game Boy games or anything with like your couch quarters? Did you ever accumulate that much change?
Oh man, I'm trying to think of any major purchases that I was able to get
That's
much
how,
of.
That's how I got Pokemon Yellow. It was a massive purchase for couch quarters.
Yeah, I don't think I ever did with, like, I think I spent them on stupid things to, like, you know, I remember there was a grocery store like a block or two away that had a vending machine with cans of soda that you could get for 25 cents. And I feel like I drank a lot of soda back then. And so, you know, it was just always quarters. It was either that or cashing it all in at the Nickelcade.
Quarter sodas, that was like a miracle of the 90s. Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly.
Off-brands, you got your Shastas. Yeah.
Exactly. You'd run down to this local Smith's and you'd get like your grape or your orange sodas with your quarters. And like we'd make our weekly runs to stock up on these quarter sodas. Oh man, the 90s were amazing.
The 90s were amazing.
So good. So good.
Greatest generation.
All right. I'm sorry. And now I would like to bequeath the time to Shan so he can talk about the Descent.
Well, hold on. I have one more thing to talk about.
Okay, well, never mind, Shan. You're going to have to take
I'm just kidding.
You.
Let's go to the Descent.
All right. Okay. Beautiful design, beautiful location. Like I love this more than almost anything in the entire game. The Descent is just absolutely ridden with disease. But before you like really get into it, you have to go into this like spooky area to get Leva Mask. And I remember the first time I played this, I was absolutely tense all the way to the back of this section where I thought I was going to get jumped the entire time. Turns out they don't even like appear until you grab the mask. That's the flag that trips it. And like and I was like I was just tiptoeing all the way to the back of the area because they're like screaming the whole time you're going there. It's like now it's like I just book it to the back. I'm not as much of an idiot, but like a very effective atmosphere, and the spores, the volumetrics of like that, and the particle effects, and I love like the clickers in the bedroom like knocking on the door and screaming, and they're up in the rafters. Like I love this section.
I had a completely opposite reaction to that first part. Like I was very tense at first and looking, and then when I realized that nothing was jumping out at me, and as I was walking by, I could see like little hidey holes and nooks at like the telltale signs of a combat area, but there was no combat happening. And I was like, oh, I've played video games before. I bet as soon as I grab that mask, I'm going to get jumped by a bunch. And so, and then I was like, and then I just kind of stood up tall and I was walking around and I was like, fine. And then I was like, once I found a mask, I was like, okay, am I ready? It's about to, like, I've played games before. I know what's coming. Like,
All right. Well, I had to reset like 10 different times, but I did manage on my best run to just nail 2 in the head with bullets and then just run through the wall. So I didn't have to kill any of the others. But they're very fast and they like to huddle together. So like on those previous 9 runs, I just kept getting grabbed because stalkers like to like bum rush you and just like grab you and pull you to the ground. They're very hard to run past. But
stalkers are scary, man.
Yeah.
They're my least
My
favorite
heart is-
enemy in the game. I hate the stalkers.
Yeah.
They fill me with like just pure terror.
I was behind playing this section of the game. So like, this is the first thing I did when I woke up this morning. It's like, I'm very groggy. I woke up early and I took a 5-hour energy and then I played this section first. And so my heart's racing and it's like, and I don't want to waste my bullets. So my like the 5-hour energy is starting to kick in and I'm resetting this section like 10 times in a row. And the stalkers just keep grabbing me and pulling me to the ground. And as the adrenaline's kicking in, I'm like, I'm into this. This is amazing. I've never had a 5-hour energy be I've never had it be so effective. It's like having the confluence of the adrenaline with the 5-hour energy at the same time. It's like a narcotic. Like I've never been more alive. Anyway, so but then you get to like the really good part where it's like you see the whole middle section of the skyscraper has been like hollowed out and it's all the way infested with all the infected fungi, and you never know which walls have clickers that are going to jump out and tear you to shreds.
Those are the worst enemies. I get so pissed off every single time. Screw you and your dumb clicker face. Because you're making me waste a shiv.
Can I just say that happens? I counted. It happened to me 4 times in this building, and I was caught off guard literally every time. It kept happening, and I kept being, and just every time I jump and I like make noises when I get scared in games. And my dog, I love my dog. His name is Batman, and he's a good boy. But he was sitting next to me, and he does not enjoy playing scary video games with me because he like I like jump and I'll like make it. I'm like, ah! I like make a noise. And then he like gets up off the couch and he walks away, like tucks his tail. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. And so this whole part of this game was like a cycle of me jumping and like saying like making a loud noise and my dog walking away all scared. And then I'd pause the game and I'd get up and I'd go, that's good. It's okay. Good boy. You didn't do anything wrong. You're a good boy. And then we'd go back onto the couch and then I'd do it again and he'd get up and get off the couch. And just this whole time my dog's like, what is going on? I'm so confused. You're getting mad at me. And then you're telling me good boy. I don't know what's happening.
So do you guys want me to kind of break the illusion and tell you how you can tell if they're going to jump out at you or not?
No, I want it to scare me every time.
This is
is the lighting?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Because there are some that like
I want to hear. Go ahead and
in
tell
the
us,
wall that don't jump out at you. If they've got like blood on their face that's like shiny and like liquid, they're gonna jump out.
Yeah.
If they're not like reflective, and I learned that. So like every
the
replay,
specular lighting.
Yeah, every replay, I'm like, okay, like I have to go in, like looking down the scope, ready to, get a good look at it while I'm still far enough away before they jump out, and then once it's like, okay, yeah, that's one, then I shoot it in the head and it just instantly dies and doesn't catch me off guard.
See, and that's not the issue that I had. It's that the overgrown fungus, even with the things in them, blends in so well to the rest of the environment that in my brain I didn't even register that there was anything there at all, even though it was the same thing and it happened to be so that's not going to help me at all because I'm a big idiot and I can't see. I'm just completely blind to them.
My first playthrough scarred me enough that either of the games, anytime I replay them and I see anything growing on the walls, I am checking for anything that's going to jump out because it got me that bad the very first time I played through it that I was just like, nope, I am not risking that. Even when there's a couple of times, even when I don't see the blood on there, I'll still headshot it just in case. And
you will not make me cry today.
So this game has indirect lighting. It doesn't have ray tracing, and I think it uses global illumination. So you'll see physical items, items that you can pick up. They always have a different lighting effect that it makes them stand out in a room that they are placed in, especially if it's a darkened room.
Specular highlights are different.
Because because these rooms often have the items in them have baked lighting because of the indirect lighting effects. So that those items can be picked up because they don't because they have the same lighting in every room.
It's just a technical limitation of not using proper ray tracing and dynamic lighting in situations. Yeah,
this game would get a massive glow up with ray tracing. I would love for it to have that, but the same limitation would be applied to these clickers on the wall, where it's the ones that are perma stuck on the wall, those have baked lighting on them, and the ones that can move don't have baked lighting, and so they would be a little bit lighter than the ones with baked lighting. So I imagine that's kind of what you're seeing.
Well, on top of that they actually have blood that is still fresh on them when they're gonna pop
different
out.
Texture work.
You can see the fluid blood on them, where otherwise it's if it's all dried and crusted, that it's oh, that's not coming out. But if it's fresh blood that looks wet still, they're coming out.
Because they're able to get up and walk around and bite stuff, so they would have fresh blood. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I can see that.
Okay.
Little storytelling there.
Yeah. And there are so many clickers in this section. It's amazing. Really pushes your limits if you're playing grounded because there's not a lot of ammo. There's an optional bloater. Why an optional bloater? I didn't even go over
optional?
there. Yeah, I didn't play that bloater. I just went the other direction.
Yeah. It's not blocking your way forward.
Here I am fighting it every time like an idiot.
I fight it every time.
It's on the left. I just go right. If you go right, you can jump down immediately. Whereas if you go left, you have to go through that room. I just jump down on the right immediately.
Right. Here I was providing a tidbit thinking oh yeah, I'm so far ahead of this game. I know when these guys are going to jump out, and then I find out that I don't even have to fight the bloater.
Well, maybe I just
actually bad at things.
Yeah.
Maybe I've just played it so many times that I've just internalized where that shortcut is.
Well, you touched on something that I really love about this section of the game is there's half a dozen micro combat encounters in here because they're on different floors and different rooms, so that they're sort of contained, but while still feeling a part of a bigger area. So you can go and you can in this little area there are several enemies, and you can clean them out, and then you can move on to the next one. But you still don't feel safe once you've cleared out those ones in that little area because the whole building is infested. And so it's this good combination of making the combat encounters manageable without just throwing 30 clickers at you at once, which would be insane. Because realistically, if these were all in the same battle area and they had that same number of infected, and you screw up towards the beginning, you make a loud noise, and you have everything bum rush you, that would be too much. And so they needed this building to be completely full of infected, but also to be manageable. So you take it in chunks, which I thought was really smart game design, because it's still tough and you still have to do a lot of resource management, but it's much more manageable because you can take it one piece at a time.
Yeah. I love every time you jump down a level, you hear some like shrieks or barks from the NPCs.
Yeah.
And so you get an immediate assessment of your threat level on that level and your orientation of where they are. So that's effective game design. I love sometimes when you jump down levels, the camera will immediately give you a short orientation towards like the lighting of the exit, so you immediately are reminded of where your final goal location is. So just like you never feel lost while you're going through this labyrinth. And I love that there are a lot of like little locations where you can pick up extra supplies that are very easy to miss, but it is very rewarding to the explorer archetype player. So and just gorgeous design. Like they went so over the top on just like elaborate design. I can't imagine how much time they spent here just throwing fungus everywhere.
Well, and I think we've been in other areas before where there's a lot of infected and where things feel overgrown and threatening, but like we find out that this building is right next to like ground zero for this city. Like where the outbreak started was at that hospital, and this is right next to that hospital. And so this building, it doesn't just feel like an infected area, it's a hive. It feels like the walls are almost completely overgrown. It barely feels like anything human or man-made, and it just feels like alien almost. It's completely overtaken by the infection, and it's so unique in that aesthetic from anything else that we've seen so far in The Last of Us that it is completely infected. This building has been completely infected.
Mm-hmm. I love then you get to the bottom, you go through a door, and you get this like other infested room with several clickers and another bloater. This part's very overwhelming, but your goal is right in front of you, so it just tempts you, right? This only took me like 4 tries. I shit you not. I had 2 bottles, one I started with and the one right in front of me. I threw it one direction, got them all started in their like in their walking
shriek and seek.
Yeah, sure. Actually, it might have even been my second try. And then on my second throw, I threw another bottle to just kind of get them navigating in that direction. And then I just booked it and I opened the door right as they were clawing at me. And I got through with not a single bullet. It was a miracle. I am a master at Grounded Plus. It turns out you actually end up with more ammo and more health if you just never take on any enemies ever.
You just leave.
You just leave.
It's Shan's favorite thing to do. You throw a bottle and you just leave. Which, you know
Throw a
what?
bottle
If you were in that situation in real life, that would probably be the best way to handle it. You just throw a bottle and run away.
Yeah. Yes, you never end up picking up any of the materials or supplies like in the area where you take on those enemies. But if you're just picking up the supplies in the liminal areas between encounters, you end up with a net surplus of supplies. So by the time I got to the Rat King, I was almost maxed out I had full health items. I had almost all of my bullets. I've played Grounded on The Last of Us 2 once before, and I killed the Rat King with 0 bullets and 0 health. This time I ended and I had full health items and I had a bunch of bullets. Like, it was amazing. I've never had such a bounty of supplies.
Proud of you. You did it.
Yeah. It turns out if you're just like, I wouldn't even say it's like a cowardice thing. Like, I feel like more courageous for like running past these people. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's like to be able to like, because these doors, right, like you have to hold the triangle as you know people are about to like claw your face off. Like, you feel brave for like avoiding that.
Escaping by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
I mean,
maybe
I
I'm a
think
coward.
no, I will. I don't know. I different. That's what one of the cool things about is you play the game how you want to play the game, and if you want to save your resources and just try to get them in the in between areas and see how many situations you can just kind of run away, which is probably what a normal person would do, then you can
You
do
know,
that.
well, you
I
know
mean, there
what?
are
It's
some
like
times where it forces you to fight, but like, yeah,
this is like the only, this is the only difficulty setting with which I would try this. Right? I play any other setting, I'm clearing out every enemy in every area. But this is like the first time I'm challenging myself to try something completely different, and it's a completely different experience, and I love it.
yeah.
Did anybody else have a really fun encounter in this area with all the mother effing clickers and the bloater? I didn't have a pipe bomb, so it's like I didn't know what else to do in this area.
Yeah, well, I had pipe bombs, but I intentionally, because I have the gift of having played this game before, I knew what was coming next. And so I was like, I'm not using a single pipe bomb on this situation because I want to save them. And so it was like all rifle blasts for me. I emptied my rifle ammo on these guys, just kind of doing the circle strafing where you run around and you pop them a few times and you keep running and you pop them a few times. And not super exciting, but it gets the job done.
I always forget that Abby just doesn't have a permashiv. And so you can't stealth take down clickers. Yeah. So when I'm doing the descent, I'm like, oh, this clicker isn't moving. Let me stealth kill it. And then it just like turns around and rips my head off. Happened way too many times. It's amazing. But then we get to the hospital. It's funny, like, now, like, the psychology of, like, it's only been 2 days, right? But, like, the psychology of, like, getting back to the wolves, and now you're with Lev and Yara, and it feels like, I already feel like I'm an other to these people. I feel like I'm already an outsider. It's amazing to me, like, how quickly that's flipped on me now that I'm protecting them, and they've changed that paradigm on me.
Yeah, I like I like how this situation plays out as Abby comes up to the hospital and she's like, hey, I need some supplies for Isaac. And they kind of look at her and they're like, well, these are all going back to Isaac. What does he need them for? And then Abby just kind of pulls out the, like, I can't talk about it. Like, it's a top secret kind of a thing. And everyone's just sort of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because Abby's
can't talk about it, or it's a secret.
Or it's a secret. You wouldn't understand. It's a secret. And so they just kind of like buy that. But then they radio Isaac and they come back in and they arrest, I don't know, whatever the wolf equivalent of arresting. They detain Abby, they handcuff her because they're like, hey, we just talked to Isaac and he says, you've been AWOL. So, and this is an interesting moment for Abby and for me as a player where it's like, you start to feel some friction between Abby and the wolves. And I think it's because of the character growth that Abby's been on for the last few days. This is another point where I'm excited to play day 3 and see how this aspect continues to play out, because it's not fresh on my mind, and so I'm excited to come at it with fresh eyes. But Abby seems pretty gung-ho on the wolves and their ideology. She's found a home. She seems to, for the most part, believe in, like, kind of what they're doing, and she speaks pretty derogatorily of scars, and so for her to, the moment that she goes and tries to rescue Owen, for them to kind of like, oh, you've been AWOL, we're gonna chain you up, like, that has got to feel like a betrayal to Abby, where it's like, I've given you guys a lot and then I go do one thing for myself and you're gonna chain me to an elevator. Like, that sucks.
Yeah, it feels like Isaac's starting to show his true nature. He seems to play like this benevolent leader role, but like you cross him at all and he just like shows his tyrannical leadership style. He's not as benevolent as he pretends to be. He's kind of an absolutist.
It's his way or the highway. Do what I say or else. Yeah.
Jeffrey Wright, I want more of him. They don't show enough Jeffrey Wright.
Well, he'll be in the show. He plays Isaac in the show, which I think is awesome.
More excuses for more Jeffrey Wright. I love every time they show like a revenant character. So they bring back Nora, and I don't know why. Like, okay, this person's long dead, like hours ago, gameplay wise, and like I don't know why that's fun to me. Like it's like in Lost, you have a character that died like a season or two ago, and then you see Charlie again, and you're like, "Aw, I miss this character." And Nora, it's like, "Oh, I gotta like smash your face in," and it's like, "Oh, you're still alive," as if I
Oh,
haven't smashed.
I
your
remember
face in.
murdering you. Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're gonna die soon. This is nice.
Oh,
She
you're
is. She's
hours
gonna die
away.
pretty
You're
soon.
gonna
Yeah.
die.
It's like right before she dies.
So immediately before.
Well,
And she's
and
like
I-
talking, yeah, she's talking about like the don't go down there. It's kind of evil down there. It's like, oh, I murder you down there.
Yep. Well, that's the thought that I had is Abby, like Nora comes and she frees Abby from her handcuffs, and then she's like, hey, I need the supplies, and Nora's like, yeah, come with me, we'll walk down this way, and you're walking down the hall, and it's the same hallway that Ellie chases Nora down, and then Nora takes you to basically the same place where she's going to die in a few hours. Like she takes Abby there and says, yeah, there's stuff down here, but it's pretty rough down here. And so it's this kind of like it felt like a callback to me where it's like, oh, I remember this place. You're about to have a real bad time in this hallway, and what comes right after this hallway, like, I don't know, just a fun like nod to where you've been before. Yeah.
Yeah, even like going into the hospital as Abby, and you're going just casually walking into this like grassy entrance area, and I'm like, I absolutely hated that area because it's overrun with wolves, and like I was stuck there for like 45 minutes trying to find the perfect run on Grounded Plus, because there's like you can be spotted from anywhere, and like it's really hard to get fresh sequences like where it would start it, where it would give you a new encounter or whatever, so that you could keep going, or like keep resetting if you been spotted. So it's like I was stuck there for so long, and she just like kind of walks in. It's like,
Yeah.
I have a lot of trauma in this one spot. Anyway, but then we go down the hospital and to the bottom floor, and I love the atmosphere of this area. We see a lot of like mise en scène of like the of ground zero of what has it been 20 years of like of when the outbreak happened, and of like all the chaos that ensued of like the patient zero people being rolled in, and then them like killing all the doctors, clawing at the walls, and you see the triage centers and all of the, I don't know. I love how much they've dressed up this area. Gorgeous. You see bloody walls. It's fantastic.
So in this area, we encounter a very large and scary foe. And I want to ask everybody, because there are so many little clues and hints as to what's coming next. Do you guys have a favorite like thing that's kind of hinting at what's about to happen? Because I've got one that I just was new to me this time.
The grumble behind the electric door that you try to open, I was like, oh, I know what that is now.
You're like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's not a bloater. Yeah.
And then I love when you come out after turning on or starting the generator,
panel?
and there's just
Oh, yeah.
and there's just this big hole in the wall where they just leave. It's so good.
Yeah. It looked like a gastrointestinal tract or something like that. It's like,
Yeah,
is
the
that
sphincter.
is that alive?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
it's definitely a
yeah,
sphincter.
I think that there's this big like hole, like fleshy hole in the wall where there's like some arms and stuff kind of like poking out, and then there's like a trail of blood leading away from it. And I was like, oh, that's like where the Rat King is probably all like squished up as a big old fungus monster. And then he
Where it
hears a
had
noise
been
and he's
birthed.
like, and he just pops it. And so that was the new one for me, is I didn't notice that that's like that's his bed. It's where he naps.
It's hidey hole.
And I didn't notice that that's like, but yeah, there's so many cool things. And then there's the hallway right before you encounter him, where like all of the walls have been like expanded and pushed out of this, like what normally is like a very tight hallway, because he's so big. So it creates this sense, especially the first time I played the game, I was like, this is like, what is down here? It's going to be some huge monster. There's like these huge things. And so it does a good job at kind of hinting to the player that something is about to happen. It's something big, but they don't straight up tell you like what's happening. So I like the build up to it, to the Rat King, a lot.
Yeah. But it's pretty casual about like a couple clickers, nothing too big, and then I love like this scene with like all the army cars or whatever, and like this like beautiful ray of light, this god light that comes down on this ambulance, and it's like, please look here, like this innocent vehicle, this is where you will find the supplies that you need. Nothing too horrifying about that. Right?
Yeah. Everyone's thoughts on just before you go into the ambulance. Let's get everybody's headspaces. Where are you guys at?
I'm like, I'm not going there. That's going to be a flag for something awful.
Yeah, mine was, okay, let's prep as many pipe bombs and fire ammo for my shotgun as
Reload
possible.
all.
Make sure I have
everything.
Make sure I have the right loadout that I want to have to fight the Rat King, and then let's go to this ray of light.
Yeah. I think that it's going to get me before I find anything, but I get in there, it's like, oh, nothing's happening. Okay, this is nice. Lundy?
Yeah, that was my experience the first time. Is it was like, okay, like there's clearly a bloater that I'm going to have to fight at some point. You know, that's what I thought.
Just
and then
the
it was
bloater.
like, oh, you know, like actually getting to the ambulance and finding the thing, like the, you know, finding the medical equipment. It was like, okay, this is nice. Like we're going to have, all right, you know, this is kind of the catch your breath moment before we get into, and it kind of is, but it's less time than you think, because it's like, okay, cool, here's everything, and then you hear the grumble and the yeah,
Rumble.
and it was, and then you first see it, and it's like, just nope, no, thank you, like go away. I
No, thank you. Not today. Yeah. See you later.
I'll full thank you.
I love that the
I forgot-
cutscene like controls your lighting, and so you're just like, you hear grumble, and you're like, but you're just kind of fumbling with your light, and then you turn and it's like he's already there, and you're like, this.
I remember very distinctly the first time playing the game. Like I have a sense it's like there is something big and terrible down here with me. I was just expecting like one big, like a bloater, but that was much bigger, like had a lot of overgrown fungus on it or something. And so then I see the ambulance with the light shining on it, and I was like, I've played games before. I know that the moment I get in that, and I'm like, that ambulance, there is one way into the ambulance and there is no way out of the ambulance. When I go into that ambulance, something bad is going to come for me behind me, and I'm not going to be able to get out. Like, I was like, I know what you're doing, game. I know what you're doing to me. But you get in the ambulance, and I agree with Shan. I love that part where there's the light and you look up and the Rat King is just already there. And it was this reaction of just like, I was so completely shocked that it wasn't just one big bloater, that it was this mashed up
Conglomeration
of bodies and conglomerate of infected people and fungus, and just so effectively horrifying and tense, and it's like, well, and it's, what are you going to do? You're in an ambulance and he is big enough to block the entire exit. Where do you go? Like, it's just, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
I love how much of a run sequence that you have. Like, Tucker and I just played Silent Hill 2, and there's like a chase sequence with a Pyramid Head, and it was pretty anticlimactic. Like, you run very casually, and it's pretty slow, and there's like one or two subversions of like something falling in front of you, and you're like, there's not much to this, and I was a little bit disappointed. Here it's like pure chaos. You're trying to open doors, things are falling in front of you, and like this guy's trying to swipe at you. It's like, this is a chase sequence. I am horrified. He's gonna grab me. He's gonna kill me. I love this chase sequence, and there's
So
like several levels to it.
I completely forgot about the chase sequence. I thought you just fell through the floor from the ambulance and you're fighting him. I completely forgot about the chase sequence. So I went into full panic mode because I'm like, oh, we're just going to fall through. I'm going to fight him. I'm going to be ready to go. It's like, oh, no, I have to run for a while and just panic. I love it.
It does such a good job of like you said, there are things that are falling. It's like you run to a door and the door's just like, no, screw you, I'm not going to open. And so you have to turn around and look as the Rat King runs at you and like kind of run towards him to then turn and take a different path. And they do that once or twice where they force you to stop and run back towards him so that you can reach an alternate path before he does. And it's like, it's just terrifying. It's such a great chase sequence.
Yeah, there's also a moment where you grab an axe to open a door and then he grabs you so that it can give you a forced camera perspective where you're staring down his maw and you get the lighting full on seeing all of his limbs and faces. And they did this too, like in The Last of Us 1, where it's like you meet your first clicker and they want to give you a close-up of what a clicker looks like. So they give you like a quick time event sequence so that you can see what it is, what's the threat. And so I love every time they give you a controlled sequence to be able to admire what the designers have done. This is really just kind of a bragging moment for the developers. I'm here for it. When I finished this game, I usually don't care about unlocking models. I beelined it for like the models and I unlocked this thing and I just like zoomed in and out. I'm like, what am I looking at? How many bodies are in this thing? I loved it.
I think the very first time I played it, I think that chase sequence lulled me into a kind of a false sense of security because it was like, I was running and panicked, but at the same time, like, well, yeah, obviously I'm going to run because they wouldn't reasonably expect me to be able to like fight something like that. Like, you have to run away. Like,
of course not. That would be insane.
That's not killable.
Yeah, it's definitely not. So it's like, okay, like I'm gonna run, and then I got the axe, and it was just kind of button mash through this like cinematic kind of thing, and I was like, okay, this is how I kill it, or at least wound it enough that I can keep running and get away. And then you fall through the floor, and it's like, haha, now you have to fight it. And I was like, come on, like I don't want to just.
Well, and can we take a second to appreciate Abby's reaction to that moment? They fall down into the pit, and the player is like, oh no, I have to fight this. And they fell in the pit. But Abby, she stands there and what does she say? She says, all right, let's do this. And I'm like, what? What kind of human person?
Down the broken axe.
Yeah. What kind of person has that reaction to that situation? You just ran away from a giant meatball with teeth, and then you fell through a hole in the floor, and then you're like, all right, me and you, let's square up. Excuse me? No, what? Who is Abby even?
I wasn't on board with where she was at. Like, I've never been farther away from the character.
It's crazy. She's such a hard A.
The first time I played this game years ago, I have never been more panicked in a game ever. Like, I think I was torn apart like 20 times. I never figured out, like, I never understood the layout of this area. So I was just constantly running around. I thought this area was much bigger than it was.
I think it's intentionally confusing to navigate because they want you to feel frantic and lost. And
yeah, I never figured out how to like get enough distance between me and the Rat King to be able to turn around and get a shot. So like I was constantly in dread and I was constantly being ripped apart. I was there for it, but like I was sweating by the end of it. I've never been so like frantic in any video game in my entire life. Like it was a true one of a kind experience for a video game.
I got really frantic when kind of clicker stalker breaks off. That's when I got really frantic in this sequence because now you have two to deal with. I got cornered probably 3 or 4 times after that, like taking a slightly wrong turn and then get pinned by one, and then the Rat King just comes in and annihilates you.
So the first time I played this game, I could not figure out the Rat King. I died and I died and I died like 20 times. And I was just like, and I turned the difficulty down to easy only to realize that doesn't do anything to the Rat King battle. It doesn't matter. It's the same difficulty no matter what. And because I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't get past this part. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And so the first time I played the Rat King, it was so hard. And so I was dreading it coming up to this part. And then I found the secret. It's pipe bombs and flamethrowers. You throw multiple pipe bombs, you shoot it a few times. And then when the clicker breaks off the side of it, then you just flamethrower it until your flamethrower is empty. And then it dies. And then you don't have to deal with them both at the same time. So the second time I was much more prepared. I knew what to do. I was like, not today, Rat King. But the first time, it was like a battle. I could not figure it out.
Yeah, it's very hard to find all of the flamethrowers when you're being chased about cat and mouse style. And it's very, very hard to craft while you're being chased. So, and like changing weaponry while you're being chased around. It's like, there are so many times where it's like, I just push the wrong button and because I'm mashing things around, so I just like a lot of times where it's like I just got ripped apart and I had to start over because I was trying to change my weapon and I just ended up like starting to craft something or I started healing accidentally.
So I know Lundy has lots of fond experiences. The Rat King is his favorite. Let's hear your take, Lundy.
The Rat King is oh man, yeah. No, my first playthrough was very similar to yours, Eric. Where like I remember playing it and getting to that part, and I spent probably an hour and a half that night just like fighting and dying repeatedly until I finally was like, you know what? No. And I went to bed and then, went to work and then like got home from work and I was like, all right, let's do this. And then I think I gave it like another hour of trying to beat it before I finally did. And it was just so infuriating because, it was just this constant like chasing me down and I felt like I didn't have nearly enough stuff. And especially like once, it splits and you've got the little one running around, it was like as soon as I can find one and start shooting, the other comes and gets me. Now this time I think it was because I played the game earlier in the year, so like it was still a little bit fresh, but this playthrough I think is the first time I've ever beat it in one go through. Like, so
Nice.
but I did
Proud of you.
I did want to like, I was curious and I let Eric know that this was my idea. I set up and recorded myself playing it just so I could keep track of like what profanities I said, just like because this is like the moment. And
how many dollars does Lundy owe the swear jar?
Yeah. So I played it on moderate. So it's not like it's an extra hard difficulty or anything, but the total swears were there were 7 swears in this one encounter.
That's not so bad.
Yeah. I think it's because it was the one time through, but the total, there was 1 shit, there were 2 goddammits, and there were 4 fucks. And so
right.
that was the total, which again, like, and I think it is because like I had played it earlier in the year and kind of figured out like, okay, this is the rhythm where it's like as soon as we dropped down, I pulled out the incendiary shell shotgun, pumped all of those in there, pulled out the flamethrower, emptied that, and that pretty much killed the big body. And then I just chased the little guy down with my shotgun and put him down. But
yeah,
it was that's how I got through it, and it was like, okay, you know what, this was pretty manageable. Like, and I think I got through on minimal swearing and didn't die. So it was, this was as close to a pleasant experience as possible as far as the Rat King goes.
Yeah. The little guy, he's a shit, but like you fall down, he pulls you down and like he gets into a swiping contest with you and then he like smoke bomb and he disappears. That was annoying.
And it's such a weird reaction from an infected. There's almost this like concept of self-preservation, because after you kill the large body, it runs away from you. It like scurries up into the ceiling and runs away. And I was like, that's not normal behavior for an infected.
Well,
So
he's a
I don't-
stalker. It's like it's a more intelligent stalker,
Okay,
and
I
they
guess
do
that's
do
true.
that.
That's true.
He has
Okay,
the
I
ability
take
of
that
like
back then.
30 brains in one
Yeah.
thing. He's the
I take that back.
He has the
Stalkers
thoughts
do
of
do
30
that.
rats.
He's
Yeah.
extra smart.
Yeah.
He's got the power of a grown man and one baby.
Yeah.
And a little baby. This section, the Rat King stalker is a lot easier than I remember. I just kind of turned my rifle into burst mode and just sniped him a couple times. He doesn't really hide that well.
Not if, well,
so-
if you get on him fast, like before he can scurry away, and you shoot him a bunch of times. You got to do it quick, or he's pretty
Oh, okay.
sneaky.
Yeah.
So if you can stay on top of it, it's not too bad. But
The worst
So
for me is
I
like
just
this-
went straight up into the vents. Like I just left, and he's still alive. And then I met him in the vents, and it was just like a really fast, just like shotgun. And
oh
he was
really?
done.
Weird.
Yeah.
the vents, because like I feel like I can never kill him quick, and so he gets up there, and so you're crawling around, and that's the part that I hate the most, because you're crawling around looking for him, and then he jumps out and like gets you, and you fall down, and you start fighting him again. But that, yeah,
Oh, that's the only area I fight him. I don't fight him before he gets up there.
Yeah, because
Oh, okay.
after that experience, but then once you're down there and you have that little before he can run off again after you fall down from the vent, you just got to shoot him really quick before he can
Oh, gotcha.
hide
Okay,
again.
yeah.
That's what I
That's
was
what-
meaning.
yeah.
We're saying the same thing, but with different words. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, then you take off from the hospital. I was curious if you had any thoughts on if there was a reason that we symbolically that we go to a hospital, or if there, because I think that there is. I think that the Rat King is symbolic. Did anybody else think so? Okay. Well, I'll shoot off my dumb reason. I think the hospital and the Rat King are somewhat symbolic of because we also have the descent. I think this is a journey that she's going through that parallels her going through her redemption, and the hospital is it's supposed to symbolize her dad dying, and so this is the memory of the Rat King is the horrific trauma of her dad dying, and that's why it's in a hospital setting, and it's this unresolved trauma that she's never come to grips with, and so her going through this process of redemption for these kids and going through it in this hospital is her confronting her trauma and overcoming it. And that's why at the end of this sequence, she has another dream sequence where she's able to go through the hospital and the load has been lightened and she's able to see her dad, because that trauma that she's finally starting to confront, or she's finally starting to go through this redemption, it's starting to be lightened, and she's instead of burying it with by going after Joel for all those years, she's finally starting to go in the right direction, and it's actually starting to fix her.
I hadn't considered the Rat King kind of being a symbol for that, but now that you've said it, I really like that thought, and it recontextualizes what I think about Abby's motivations towards Lev and Yara as a part of her redemption cycle. So that's interesting. I'm going to have to sit on that for a minute. I like that thought process and that symbolism a lot.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
The descent is her going down into the
It's
depths
being
of her
brought
trauma.
low. Yeah, being brought low before she can be lifted up. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
that's I don't know how I missed that. It seems so obvious now.
Yeah, it never occurred to me either. It just, to me, the only symbolism was, the developers. It was them giving me the middle finger and just being we hate you as a player, and we're gonna make you go through this. And that was the only, that was the main message that I took away. Is it was Neil Druckmann hates me as a person. This felt personal to me. That he was I want Lundy to suffer. Lundy specifically is going to suffer because of this game. But no, I really, I think that's so perfectly stated that I think that's what it has to be. That's what that's narratively what
Uh,
it has
yeah,
to be. Like, I
unresolved
can't
trauma.
think of anything else.
It's I mean, I don't know. At one point I thought, am I overthinking this? And I'm like, no. She's going through redemption and she's confronting trauma, and then they immediately show, like, when I thought I was overthinking it, they immediately showed a dream sequence where she felt lightened and she saw her dad, and I was like, no, 100%. That's what it is.
Yeah, seems deliberate.
And the
Well-
descent, like, it's definitely her descending into the depths of her unresolved trauma. Like, that's what it is.
Well, and the thing that so if we're going with this analogy, which I think is exactly what the story writers intended, is the thing that she needs to help heal that trauma. Like, it's the Rat King is kind of guarding the medical supplies that she needs. There's this big lump of trauma in between her and the healing, the very literal health pack that she needs to take to Yara to help Yara be healed, so that Ashley can be healed on the inside. And so I love that idea that you
call her
fight this
Ashley
trauma.
again?
Did I call her Ashley? I don't know why I keep doing that. Abby. And anytime I say Ashley, just assume I mean Abby. I'm a dum-dum and I get my names mixed up. Not sure what's going on there. But anyways, I like that symbolism a lot, where she gets those medical supplies, is able to bring them back to Yara, and then Mel is able to use those supplies to help Yara. And then you get a really nice moment with Abby and Yara and Lev.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we go back to the aquarium, and Abby has a conversation with Owen, and they say, Abby says to Owen, she says they're just kids, right? Because, like, there's obviously the tension of, like, they're Seraphites, we shouldn't be doing this, but Abby's having her realization of, like, humanity, and she's starting to connect to that again after everything she went through of dehumanizing who Joel was, and untethering herself from, like, humanity to be able to do that, and also the inhumanity of killing Seraphites and being the best at that. She now is starting to connect to it again. She says they're just kids. And then she has this pregnant pause, and she says, what happened to us? Now I'm curious why you think she is thinking about the kids and then takes it in another direction. Why she's asking what happened to us? Like, what is she thinking?
So I think Owen's line after that, really, I'm going to use this in a very intentional way, illuminates it, because he asks, maybe we stopped looking for the light. And he says it kind of jokingly, but I think there's a lot of truth into that. Is they were once very ideologic,
Ideologues, yeah,
that wanted a better world, and now they're here murdering seemingly innocent people for a cause they don't care about. So for me, I interpret it as what happened to us is we've lost ourselves, and more so Abby, losing herself with the Joel, but now I think Owen has lost a little bit of his self with his endeavor to go to Santa Barbara. Illuminated by the, it's a lead, I got to see it through line from earlier on before day one.
The end of day one. I think that, and I think that what spurred Abby to ask the question what happened to us is she sees these two kids that are in pain, and those two kids, Lev and Yara, are very directly connected to Ashley, to Abby at this point. What is happening?
She's played by Ashley.
Yeah, maybe
actress.
That's what it is. I don't know, but
sure.
Abby, the character, not Ashley. Abby is very personally connected at this point to Lev and Yara, and I think it's easier for her to look at them as kids and remember when she was a kid, and remember when she was a little more bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then go, what's happened to us? Like, what? Like, look at where we are now. Why aren't we where we used to be? Like, what happened to us?
Yeah, like, obviously the Fireflies were shitty people, but, like, the core of their ideology, before they got to the radicalization where they were willing to kill for their end result, where the ends justified the mean. um but like at the core of their ideology was wanting to save people and wanting a better humanity, and they've lost that clarity in their life. And this is the first time where Abby is realizing that she has dehumanized the Seraphites and she is killing, and this supplants the value of her father and the community of the Fireflies that she came from. And after going through this journey with Lev and for Yara, she's starting to realize that she can save people, and she needs to come back to that instead of killing. And so she realizes that and so that's why she, this seemingly non sequitur, she's like, they're just kids, what are we doing? And this is where Owen already was, and this is where I think, like he was like, she had mentioned just in a previous scene, like that Owen was immature because she had grown up, but Owen was technically more mature in that moment because he wanted to forsake that lifestyle and run off to Santa Barbara because he doesn't want to murder anymore. She's starting to like get on the same page as him, and she's ready to move on and live that lifestyle too, because she wants to preserve life instead of sacrificing it.
Yeah. Well, and not just that, I think that Abby realizes that she kind of has to be done with the wolves because, she went AWOL, they straight up locked her up, and then she broke out and ran away. And it's like, I think that she's starting to realize that bridge is burned and she's kind of in a mess right now. And so it's like, it's sort of like, what did we become? But it's also like, okay, what comes next? Like, what do I do now? Yeah. Because I can't move backwards. I think that I've burned that bridge. So what do I do now?
Yeah. Yeah. So then after that, we have the dream sequence. We kind of jumped the gun. We already talked about it. But because we've been talking about it so much and taking it beat by beat, like when we had this dream sequence and she sees her dad, like I actually got the chills this time. Like I'm so far obsessed with Abby's story, and I'm so on her side at this time that's like I genuinely felt like she is lightening the load and I'm there with her on her emotional journey, and I felt like she is earning it. And so I love this part. I don't know. Anybody else?
It's a very special moment, especially when you bookend it with like at the beginning of the day, it starts with her having a nightmare of Lev and Yara strung. Like she walks down the hospital hallway, opens the door where her dad would have been killed, and she sees Lev and Yara strung up. And then at the end of the day, she has that same dream, but it's just her dad, and he just kind of turns around and they smile at each other, and then the dream ends. And it's just this really great symbolism of like, it's a really good visual indicator to us as the audience to be like, Abby is getting better. This was broken and it's healing. And it's because of what she's doing for Lev and Yara. So,
yeah. Like they never actually say it, right? But like she sees her dad getting murdered, having been murdered there. Then I think you can just assume she's had nightmares about that for 4+ years, right? You assume she's gone over and over on that, and then she dreams about Lev and Yara being murdered there. This is the first time in 4 years where she has seen her dad alive and smiling there with like these crepuscular rays of light. This is the first time she's been resolved and she's been happy, and it's because she's on the same page with like the good person that her dad was. She knows that she is starting to resolve and be like a good person like her dad kind of was. He's kind of a dick, honestly, but
Abby views him as in Abby's eyes, he's about as good as it gets.
Right. He is a good person. He just like took it one step too far in not in circumventing Ellie's autonomy. That's where he pooched it.
I think that's one of the overarching themes of this game is that everybody looks good from the right perspective, and like it's showing us, like, and this kind of comes back to, what I brought up towards the beginning about, I had a view of Joel that you guys have challenged, and it's made it look different. But the game does that with Abby, where the very beginning of the game casts Abby in a very bad light. They're like, she's Joel's murderer. Like, that's it. Like, she is the antagonist of this game. And then halfway through, it makes you play as her. And in a lot of ways, like, her story mirrors the first Last of Us game. And it shows her on a similar journey as Joel, where it's, here's this kid that she kind of almost doesn't really want much to do with at first, but they grow together and helps, bring her from the terrible person that she was into a good figure. It's this redemption arc, and it just constantly challenges your preconceived notions to say, no, there's nuance to everybody. There's nobody in this world that's purely bad. There's nobody that's, purely good, as we see with a lot of what Ellie does. And, it's just constantly challenging our viewpoint and to say, well, if you look at it this way, now do you understand why they are the way that they are? And I think that's such a beautiful way to tell a story and to build a game, to challenge your ideas and to say, here's what we know you think, but what if you see what's behind the curtain?
Yeah, I agree. Any other closing thoughts?
I do think it's a little bit funny, to Lundy's point, how similar the bullet points of Abby's quest are to the bullet points of Joel's quest. That they're both like escorting a younger person, and they play a similar role in that younger person's life. And Abby obviously hates Joel, and so I do think there's a little bit of humor there, where it's how similar they actually are.
Yeah, they do a lot of parallels that kind of go over your head. It's like kind of beat for beat. Like, Lundy, I just barely realized yesterday when we were doing our last episode, it's like, oh, Owen doesn't want to kill the old Seraphite man, and that parallels Joel being killed by Abby, and that's why he chooses not to do it, because he doesn't want to murder an old man because he hates that Abby did. Like, there are so many things, like, how did we not like pick up on these obvious things that are like one for one parallels, and then a person making an opposite choice when given the opportunity? That's why they're doing it. It's like, it's right in your face and you could just miss it.
Yep.
It's so
Very
intentional.
Smart and intentional storytelling. I dig it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for joining us. Please like, comment, subscribe. Join us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please listen to Eric's Indie Corners on Thursdays. And thank you, Lundy, for joining us today. And we'll have you back whenever we get the chance. And that's it for us today. Bye, everybody.
Yay, we did it. We did a day in less than 3 episodes.
Outro. Bleepity doof, bleepity bloopity blow.